Chris Keener in the podcast studio. This is the first Trends with Benefits podcast that we are doing in studio. Very much still the JV version, but I feel like a big shot, man. How about you?
Yeah, man. This feels good. We're in our new space here, Main Street, Santa Monica. We're just getting it going, so we have some work to do here in the podcast, but it feels good. Feels like you're going to have some good conversations in this room.
I needed to have you in here first because I needed good juju.
I
was like, it's going to be great juju with Chris and Kyle.
That could be our podcast.
Yeah. And I remember really early on when we first met, we were tasked with writing a script together, and we hadn't really connected. I hadn't even met you in person before, and we met on Zoom, and we were both feeling each other out.
Yeah.
And then one of us made a joke and the other made a joke, and we're like, ooh, this is good.
Yeah.
And then I reflected on a call with the MUD WTR team after, and I was like, it feels like when you start making out with a girl and you're like, this is going to be good.
This is going to work. Yeah. The part of that's the best is that you feel capable, like, oh, I'm enjoying what I'm putting forth, and in the context of this person giving me back what they're giving me back. So you get better in the embrace of that creative dance with someone. And there's nothing that feels better than that besides making out.
Besides making out. And our relationship's still young, Christopher.
Yep, we'll see.
Yeah. I think that you probably got better at that with all the improv that you've done.
Yeah. Yes and listening.
A lot of yes ands.
A lot of yes ending. Improv is a skill for life, for sure. And it's the best time you can have on 2 feet. There's nothing more fun. You've done it too, yeah?
Well, I did one this winter in LA, and unfortunately it was still when the mask mandate was on. So we were trying to do improv with masks. So it was a lot of eye contact.
That's like double Black Diamond improv.
Yeah,
really, because
I got straight into it.
And so much of what you're doing is reacting. I mean, it's all reacting. It's all listening to what the person's giving you. So if you're listening and 50%, 80% of someone's face is cut off, you're not hearing nearly as much.
But I liked it. I thought that I think that it gives you permission to play another person, and we're all just playing some version of ourselves depending on the situation. So that becomes very obvious in improv.
Yeah. It's definitely a playful. It is the way to regress adults to childhood, is to get them improvising.
There was one exercise where we were forced to pretend like we were wearing a certain outfit and play the person who's playing that outfit, and you couldn't say what you were wearing, and then the audience had to guess what you were wearing. So if you're a park ranger or something, you can't say I'm a park ranger, but you go on stage with the energy, pretending like you have the hat and the khakis and the whole thing. And it made me think, well, that's why we dress up anyway. That's why we go into the closet and we're like, I'm going to wear this right now because it's going to make me feel like I have permission to get into this personality, and I want to be in that more.
So how often do you choose an outfit that dons a certain personality with it?
This is embarrassing to say, but more since I've moved to LA.
Yes, totally.
I'm like, I'm not going to be one of those people.
Well, all you said before was like, I am a gift of Patagonia. You wear a lot of Patagonia, which actually now I was actually thinking like, man, I want to rock Patagonia all the time because of this news with Yvon Chouinard and giving away the company and how brilliant that whole thing is.
So gangster.
But it's such a good thing that you've expanded your clothing horizons here in LA, I think. Did I ever tell you my theory about why clothing is important?
No, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so I was in Italy, and it's very easy. I was, of modest means with my dress as a child. And my dad was just a school teacher and didn't care much about clothes and would wear sweatpants, with a collar shirt tucked in and stuff like that. So fashion wasn't that important. But then after being in Italy, there was a realization that people wear certain clothes to dignify the public space. And that the reason people dress so nicely is not is not to self-aggrandize or not. I mean, that certainly could be part of it, but it's I almost looked at it as like, this is a donation to the public space. To carry yourself well and to dress well is the equivalent of these beautiful buildings you're walking by, and the architecture has these, you know, intricate designs. And so it's all dignifying the public space. So when you go out in public and you look like a schlub, you're sort of detracting from the public space.
Right, that's the equivalent of graffiti on the wall.
Yeah,
of the mural.
don't be graffiti.
Don't be graffiti, bro.
So I think that's one really nice way of looking at fashion and dressing certain ways and self-expression. It's like, I'm gonna give of myself to the visual environment.
I think that's a great way to look at it, because it makes it not so much about you.
Yeah.
And I'll take that on. Yeah. You actually probably played the most like game-changing outfit up level in my maybe adult life with that hat that you gave me.
Had Kyle a hat.
we were down in Mexico on a trip together, and you thought that you got the hat for Shane, but like it didn't fit his head or something.
A hat chooses a person. It's a sorting hat, you know, Slytherin. You'll know if you're chosen by the hat, and you, a solid Hufflepuff, will get chosen by the hat. The sorting hat chose you, man.
Yeah, big cowboy hat. Yeah. I felt like I could point more. Like people started yielding at stop signs.
People respect a cowboy hat.
Yeah,
a good one if it fits. If it doesn't, giggle fest.
Yeah, no, but it was like a sword in the stone moment. Like it has chosen.
Yeah, chose you, bud.
Yeah, and then I wore it for the next week and was like, I can't be that guy who's the cowboy hat guy, and I haven't worn it in quite some time.
You can't wear it to like a co-working space. You know, you have to choose your environs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a little while.
You've been traveling.
I've been traveling, yeah.
You have been in Indonesia.
Yes.
And far off on boats and things. And before that, you were in Alaska for a while.
That was a few months before that. But yes, I have been on a few boats.
Yeah.
A few boats have. I got to say, I don't think I need to live on boats.
Yeah.
It's one insight I've come to since being on boats.
What is the experience of being long and remote on a boat? What is that's unique? I've done it myself, but I was with 500 college kids. I did a semester at sea. Very different experience.
Oh, wow. On one of the big ships?
A ship, yeah.
Cool.
Very fun.
Well, I mean, you get really used to poop in the water. Enjoyed that, but just jump in and do it.
Do you ever do it just kind of
overboard? Like hold the rail?
Yeah.
Well, that was actually lesson one that they taught us when we got on the boat in Indonesia is when you go outside in the middle of the night, don't take a piss off the side of the boat.
Right.
Because if you're on a crossing, you could fall in, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Not good.
And that happened to a guy like a decade prior, and he was at sea for 28 hours, and he lived and then finished the boat trip.
Whoa.
What a guy.
What a guy. I knew a guy like that.
Really?
There's a guy that fell off my ship.
At your semester at sea?
Yeah. Yep.
How did he fall off?
It's a pretty good story.
Tell me.
You want to hear it?
Yeah.
All right. So he was my dearest friend on the ship. This is going to sound crazy if you've never been on a ship. My experience of crossing the sea on a ship was, and this is a cruise ship. So keep in mind that the deck is 60 feet off the water, the lowest deck. So you're crossing this incredible ocean, and there's flying fish jumping, and you're seeing sunsets, and there's just so much of a presence that the sea brings. And you want to interact with it because it's this like feminine, moving, beautiful thing. And we're surfers and we love the water. And so there's just this intense urge to be closer to the water, to be in it, or just touch it. And so we were dicking around on the deck, day like 3 already. We were thinking like, wouldn't it be interesting if we could touch the water somehow? Yeah. And of course we were kidding. It was the dumbest idea ever.
It's all around us.
We're going to call it the rope dip club, and we're going to to take these life rings and we're going to lower each other down into the water and then pull each other back up, just so we get to touch the water, just so we get to feel what it's like in the water. Stupidest idea ever. The first day on the ship, they tell us, they bring us, all 500 of us, new students, we're all excited to go on this trip. They bring us into the student union and they say, there's 2 rules on the ship. One is don't fall off the ship. In our 150 years of bridge experience between the crew, we've never rescued anyone. Here's why. Because you fall off, it's hypothermic first. Most of the seas we're traveling in, within a half hour, you'll go hypothermic. And that's anything under like 65 degrees or something. It's warmer than you think that you'll still get hypothermia. Secondly, we won't be able to see you. It's a needle in a haystack situation. They have to turn the ship around. It takes full 45 minutes just to turn the ship around. And then, if it's at night or if there's waves, there's just no way we're going to find you. It never happens. Don't do it. Don't fall off the ship. Okay, so that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is don't rent a car in a foreign country, which we totally broke that and went to Bosnia in a car. But another story. But so we're midway across through the Red Sea, and we had traveled all the way across the Pacific, through the Indian Ocean, and now we're going through the Red Sea. And so we've had some experience on the ship, and now we're really jonesing, because this crossing from India through the Red Sea to where Egypt is, where the Great Pyramids are in Cairo, that was our next destination. So we're going to pull through the Suez Canal, and while the ship went through the Suez Canal, we would get off and go to the Great Pyramids overnight and get
It's a
back
whole
on the ship.
semester.
Whole semester.
So how many months is that?
It's 100 days total, 50 days in port, 50 days at sea. While
Cool.
you're at sea, you're studying.
Okay.
While you're in port, you're going off and traveling and experiencing.
And
these
what were
new
the main
cultures.
ports that you were going to?
So we started in Vancouver and went west around the world. So Japan, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Malaysia, India, Egypt for an overnight, Turkey, Croatia, Italy, Morocco, and back. So mind-blowing trip. I'm 19 years old, 20 years old. It was really, popped my travel cherry, and I think so many people on the ship. So we're traveling now across India, and this is like a 2-week crossing, and we're halfway through the trip, and we really just want to interact with the water. But again, a stupid idea, ridiculous idea. No one would ever do that, except a dear friend of mine. I'm downstairs writing myself, some weepy song on my guitar, as one is prone to do on first travel.
At 19.
Yeah, totally.
Abroad.
Just laying it on thick. And I get this, my friend comes and knocks at the door and says, Jay has fallen overboard. And then I hear that there's this call out everywhere on the speakers and stuff like that. And it's 12 o'clock at night. And so I run upstairs thinking, well, number one thought, he's dead, because they told us they don't rescue anybody. So I get up there, and he's been in the water now for 30 minutes. And I get upstairs, and it's dead quiet. And 700 people, the whole student population and the whole crew is out on the railings looking for him, looking out into the water as these big searchlights sweep back and forth across the Red Sea. And you could hear a pin drop, and then there's people wailing and crying, and then me running around telling them to shut up because we might be able to hear him, and I'm freaking out because he's my best friend. And as far as I know, he's dead. And at the time, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. The light sweeps across, and we see this needle in a haystack. There he is, and he's a couple hundred yards out, and he's starting to sink below the water, and he's screaming for help, and he's starting to go under and come up, and it's just this eruption on the deck of joy, and then it's shut up, everyone, shut up, and here he comes, and they lower these lifeboats down. And, there's the whole crew by the side, and I run over near the side, and I see them bring him up, and he's in his boxer shorts, and he's shivering, and his eyes are wide, crazed and wide. And they whisk him away right to the nurse's office, and we don't see him. And I'm standing next to the head officer, safety officer of the ship, and he's this Croatian guy who's in the Croatian Navy, and he's there smoking and just like, he's shaken. And I started talking to him, and he said that the Red Sea where we were now, there was an incident in the Croatian Navy where they did a drill where they put a bunch of their naval officers in the water. And they lost something like 15 people to a shark attack that night. So even doing a drill, these seas are the most shark infested apparently in the world. And so he was just completely freaked out. They allowed one person to go see him that night. Three people, three of his friends. I was one of them. Other guy was the guy who saw him go over the side, who I got to hear from, and then another friend. So I got to go in and see him that night. No one else did. A week later, by the way, we get to Egypt, I guess a few days later, and they kick him off the ship, because it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to turn the ship around, and you lose port time, and it's like a whole to-do. So they're furious with him. But I get to go in and see him that night, and I walk in and it's like I guess I expected him to be contrite or kind of receding, or I don't know what, but I get in there, and he's got these wide eyes, and he looks at me and he goes like this. He's like, "I did it, bro. I did it." And I was like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." Yeah. Like that was beyond the stupidest thing I've ever heard about. And how do you do that? Like, what did you think would happen? He's like, and he started to explain, like, I thought, Brian, my dear friend Brian was there too, and Brian saw him go over the side of the ship. He took a life ring, put it around, like we had talked about as a joke, remember, like as the stupidest idea ever, put it around his waist and thought he could scale down the side of the ship. So Brian's there watching him. I'm getting this story later from Brian. Watching him go over the side railing and starting to like climb over the side. And Brian's like, "Jay, what do you do? Stop. No." And then all of a sudden, Jason's gone, disappeared in the water. Because of course you put a life ring around you and you put all your weight on it and it goes like this right up over your head and you're in the water. He's 60 feet down, falling in the water. Gives him a black eye, which he had that night. So I get to go and kind of finish hearing this story and what happened as he went over. It's kind of interesting. So Brian's there, sees him go over, and immediately starts throwing these rings in the water. And they have water-activated safety lights on them. So that's the good news. Is he's immediately pulls the fire alarm, and it's man overboard, and he gets word to the bridge, and before you know it, he's up on the bridge where Captain Donald Ryan is up there. An Irish captain, and he says, "Son, I need you to tell me exactly what happened, and don't try and protect your friend. I need to know what happened so we can, possibly get this guy." And Brian says, "Yeah, he tells him what he did, and the captain's just like incredulous. What are you talking about?" And he says, "What's the fellow look like?" And Brian's like, "Yeah, he's like 6 feet tall. He's a black guy," and Captain just goes, "Fuck." Like head down, like now we're never gonna find this guy. It's night. He has dark skin, and he's
no.
So it was just this like not only needle in a haystack situation, but if he proceeds to tell Brian, once we get him back at the safety meeting, they tell us if the ship was going 2 knots faster, he would have got sucked into the propeller. So that is a blessing. There was no waves that night. It was just 3-foot surf. It wasn't anything. So that was a huge blessing. We were in one of the warmest seas we were in the whole trip. So that was a blessing. So all that contributed to him surviving. And then I get Jason's story, which is the best part, when he talks about what it's like being in the water, right? Like, so he's fallen into the water and he starts to see the ship go away. And he has a lot of, I think at the time he had a lot of bravado. I don't know what's the word.
Clearly.
He's a young man with a lot of
Yeah.
spit and vinegar, clearly. And he sees the ship start to go over the horizon, and he's like, Brian, the guy up on what are you doing, bro? Like turn the ship around. Get him to turn the ship around. And the ship just keeps going. And the lights of the ship go over the horizon. And he's alone in the Red Sea at night, in the middle of, and he knows there's sharks, there's what, and he has this thing. He's like, I'll just keep, I just have to focus on just treading water, and I can't tread water too much because there's probably sharks. And he says there's phosphorescence everywhere in the water. And the more that he moves his arms, the more that he stirs that up, and the more he's worried that sharks are gonna like see it. He's got these jeans on. He has to take off his jeans. Pictures his jeans like slowly starting to, sink 1.5 miles to the ocean floor. And then he's, takes off his shirt, and then he's still there, and it's still not coming back. Eventually the ship, he sees it like the lights come back, and he's, ecstatic, but he sees that it's not coming towards him. And now he's got to swim. He's got to swim towards the ship in a full sprint start swimming, knowing that as he's stirring up this stuff, he's probably more of a target for the sharks. So picture like swimming for your life away from phantom sharks towards a boat that's not coming towards you. And he starts to lose his breath. He starts to go under because he's been in the water. He's starting to cramp. His breath is crazy because he's flighting, both.
He's fighting and flighting.
So anyway, he obviously made it back and continued to be an interesting person. And so that was the story of how that silly idea about dipping ourselves in the water played out.
That was a fucking story, man.
Yeah, pretty intense.
That's pretty intense.
I wrote a pretty weepy song about it.
Did you?
Better
Afterwards,
believe I did.
My friend Jason.
It went over the edge.
Turn the light on. Turn the light on. Wow, man.
Yeah.
Don't fall overboard on a ship.
Rule number 1.
We had a moment on our way back. So it was in the Mentawai Islands. And
for people who don't know, where is that? Because I had to look it up.
Sure. So the Mentawai Islands are off. It's an island chain off of Sumatra in Indonesia. And what makes the Mentawai special are that there are perfect reef setups through this chain of islands, which make these mechanically ruler edge perfection waves. And it's also right along the equator, so you get the doldrums, and it's not a lot of there's not a lot of wind in the Mentawai Islands, which is what ruins a lot of surf destinations around the world. Not ruins, but just makes them less than ideal, right? Like you have a spot like Ireland, which gets pounded with surf, but also there's a lot of bad wind that comes with it. So there'll be months and months of horrible waves. The Mentawais are so special because it's relatively glassy often. And they get a lot of swell in that area. It was discovered in the 1980s. Guy named Martin Daly, Aussie dude, and just found that it was one perfect setup after the next, after the next, after the next. And now they have a number of boat charters out there. It's pretty popular.
It's quite popular, yes.
Quite popular. Yeah, it's like the premier surf destination. If you want to go get the best waves of your life, there's a high chance you can do it in the Mentawai Islands.
That's just interesting in itself, because you think of these kind of so hard to get there. Like, it's far, and yet it's crowded.
It's so weird, right?
It's bizarre.
It's super bizarre.
You must get
very
there
little built, and you just, if you come from America, it's a 28 hours, 30 hours to get over to Sumatra, and then it's another 10 hours to make the trek out from Sumatra to those islands. It's overnight. And then you're out there, and then you show up at the wave, and there's like 6 other boats with 10 surfers apiece, and you're like, oh, wow, I'm surfing with 60 guys right now. Interesting. Feels like I'm at Malibu. Not quite. And the surf captains are also always kind of maneuvering to find good waves where there might not be as many people, and there's such a plenum of waves that you...
Did you say plenum?
Plenum, yeah. Is that a word? I think
is.
so.
It's great.
I think it's a plenum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plethora?
A plethora of tubes. There's a plethora of
There's
tubes.
a total plethora of
Yeah.
tubes. I definitely used that word in a college entrance
Yeah.
exam and definitely didn't get in because of it.
Yeah. So you, yeah, but it feels very safe, you know, there, and they have it dialed, right? Like the crew out there, they're out for 12 days. They come back for 2, they come back out for another 12 days, in for 2, back out another 12. So it's like, it's very, I don't want to say plug and play, but they've just done that trip so many times that they know exactly where to set you up. You know, the meals are great. They're just kind of moving people through. So it feels like, oh, yeah, I'm on a boat, but I'm being very well pampered right now. And there was a moment on our crossing back to Sumatra at the very end when our engine died. And it was a squall. So we were all in bed and it was going up and down, up and down. And, you know, half the boat was seasick at the time. And then all of a sudden we just stopped and started rocking back and forth a bit more than usual. And we got up and the crew was under in the mechanics doing some shit with the engine. And all of a sudden it hits you like, oh, we're in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
And these are uninhabited islands for the most part?
There are a couple land camps, but we were between the land camps and Sumatra at the time. And luckily they were able to get the motor up pretty quickly. It wasn't an emergency situation, but it was funny how there are certain amenities in any given environment that make you feel safe, but then one little kind of chink in the armor can make you realize just how vulnerable you are.
Ooh.
And it was funny because you just talked about this 19-year-old guy who then finishes up getting so close to death, a hair's distance away, and he's like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm 32 now, and it was amazing how much more I was thinking about how I could get hurt out there.
Yeah.
Just thoughts per day of potential injuries were so much more than they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was crazy to start to notice my mind change and be more risk aware.
Isn't that bizarre that like the more life you have to live, the more you're willing to throw it all away?
The more life, say that again.
The more life you have ahead of you, the more you're willing to throw it all
Right.
away.
Yeah.
But you start to invest in life, you know?
Yeah.
And over time, and it's like, no, I'm invested in this. I don't want to.
Well, you'll even think thoughts like, I was a skateboarder growing up. You'll even think thoughts was like, where you're like, I could die doing this, but it'd be worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
No, you just haven't had a bunch of life to live yet.
Yeah.
So you're not making the correct equation in your head.
Yeah.
And while we were out there, there was a day where this little motorboat came up to us. We were kind of close to this land camp island, and someone was like, "Hey, does anyone know how to relocate a shoulder?" And I was like, "Well, my friend has shown me how. I've never done it myself." And he's like, "Well, that's better than nothing." So I hopped on the boat with him, with another dude on our boat, and there was a guy who had dislocated his shoulder pretty badly on the land camp, and it was way out.
Oof.
And I was like, well, okay, there's this technique that I know that my friend has shown it to me. So we lay him back and I start moving his arm up.
Play
and he's
doctor.
Like, I played doctor, yeah. And I was like, how confident do I want to sound right now? Because I want to show him that I have some authority, but I also don't want to give him false hopes. Right? So I'm like, I've seen this done before, but I haven't physically
and it was a
done
reputable
it.
show.
It was a reputable.
It was ER.
Yeah. And it was funny too, is I was shown to me by a guy named Greg Long, who's a very well-known big wave surfer, and
he's probably doing it to himself every other day.
And he's done it so many times, and he also teaches courses on big wave safety. Like if you get fucked up in a remote place, you want Greg Long to be there. Just run out of the bushes. I got you. He's like, the guy brings defibrillators on surf trips.
Yeah,
right?
He makes them out of bamboo.
Exactly. He just rubs the sticks together. Got you, bro.
That guy's a That's a man's man right there.
So I'm like, all right, well, what did Greg tell me? And he's like, okay, well, you move the shoulder just like so, but it's not going back in. So I'm starting to lose confidence in myself.
Maybe
here.
you should like walk us through this so that we can perform this surgery.
Everyone should look up YouTube videos on this, but you slowly rotate the shoulder out and up, and it should pop right back in.
Right.
But the longer it's stayed out, the harder it is to get back in because the muscles will contract around the shoulder.
Yeah.
So there's this. I'm working this guy through it. I feel like a massage therapist for like 20 minutes. Meanwhile, my buddy who's on the boat with us is like trying to tell me I'm doing it wrong and that we should do it this other way. Meanwhile, I don't really trust him.
Oh God.
And I'm like, I think that you're just being overconfident and now I can tell we're like getting competitive.
Now you're like, I'm the doctor.
Yeah, we're like getting competitive about who's going to get this guy's shoulder in.
Ooh.
And then there's this point where I'm like, who has a cell phone? And someone has a cell phone and I call Greg and it goes to voicemail. But someone's like, are you calling Greg Long right now? Like they knew. They're like, yeah, call that guy. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Anyway, we work on this guy for like an hour with more and more aggressive positions. And meanwhile, you get it to a certain point and he's like, ah, and I'm like, shit, and then like my buddy is like, I think we're making it worse. Like,
oh man,
I'm sorry. And then it was a failed attempt. We didn't get it back in.
That's the end of the story?
That's the end of it's a horrible
God.
end of the story. I know. And he's like, sorry. Well, I'm like, yeah, sorry. You got to go into Sumatra 8 hours, 10 hours away from here.
So
now.
in researching YouTube after the fact, per Greg, did you get Greg on the phone? And
I didn't, but it was, I actually don't know that we could have done much more because it had been out already for like 2 hours. And at that point you might need a doctor and to have them inject you with various things to allow it to go back in more.
Yeah.
But it's a horrible end to a story. I'm sorry to...
well, you're reminding me of one with a happy ending that happened to me a week ago. And this may be falling into TMI territory, but I also want to be vulnerable about this because if anyone has ever had this happen, it is one of the great painful experiences of life. And so a week ago and change, I was, I noticed I was peeing blood at night, and my girlfriend and her son were in bed, and I went in the room and I said, this is, there's something a little funny going on. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, I'm on the floor of the bathroom in the worst pain I've ever been in, a blinding pain, a pain that was so intense that I started to go somewhere else. I couldn't talk. My girlfriend ran in. She called 911 and she asked, and immediately I was like, yes, 911. I'm a guy that wouldn't normally call 911. I think I can fix everything, or I think, didn't really believe. It's hard for me to get to the point where I would think I need to go to the hospital. But this was that kind of, it was just so immediate. And I didn't know what was happening. As far as I was concerned, my, pancreas burst, whatever a pancreas is, like, appendix or something.
But it feels like you're dying.
Stomach cancer. I felt like I was dying.
Yeah.
I felt like my body was dying, and this is what it feels like to die, because there's nothing else that could be that painful. And sure enough, the ambulance come a few minutes later, and immediately, he said, kidney stones. This is kidney stones, and you're passing kidney stones. And I was. And ended up in the hospital and with a lot of beautiful, wonderful modern pain medication, which was just wonderful. And found myself at 5 a.m, biking home on an Uber bike because I had passed everything and, back to ship shape. But that's a strange thing because anybody can get kidney stones, and there are some indications for why you get them, but it's not one-to-one. Like you could do, avoid certain things or whatever, and you could still get kidney stones. It could be genetic. You could still get them. I might get them again in my life, which is a horrible thing to think about. But the interesting thing about those is there's not, they say, and that's not me because I'm a modern male. I would never say this, that they're as painful as childbirth. Of course, yeah. I'm not stepping my toe in that argument at all. But I've also heard from women who say as much the same, that they've had both, and that there's something acutely painful about kidney stones.
So women can pass kidney stones
as well.
And they're just as painful
as well. Yeah. So,
and is it a stone? Is it what is
it's
it? Is
a
it
little
like
stone. It's a little
calcium?
calcium. Yep. Little calcium deposit, little ball of that.
Wow.
Yep. It's bizarre.
How is it? I think that pain's really interesting in
Yeah.
that it's just sensation, and so much of what we do at Mudwater is breath work, cold plunge, sauna, and so much. If you really want to step back, so much of like looking at human history is just responding to various painful sensations differently, and we very much become inured to it the more we do it, right? Like out in Alaska, for example, the Aleut people lived up there, and they would live there through the Alaskan winters on these remote islands, living on whale blubber in negative temperatures. Like, I can't imagine that, but that was their normal, right?
Yeah.
So that they'd become inured to that sensation to the point where, they're the fish swimming and they don't know what water's like, right? That's the old parable.
And by the way, genetically modern humans in Northern Europe, during the Ice Age, before fire was invented.
Yeah.
So that's a thing that we can't, people can actually endure that kind of cold, and we're built for it in some. It's bizarre to think about.
Yeah. So I mean, you've done so much work, doing breath work, doing cold plunges, sort of learning to become more literate with these sensations.
Yeah.
Did you find that you acted differently in the face of this pain than you had to other painful situations, or what was it like?
Yeah, 100%. And it was very conscious from the beginning. And the biggest change for me from previous experiences of pain was being in the pain versus observing that I was in the pain. And so there was some part of me through this whole experience that was observing my body, that was able to drop back to a level of just awareness that let me be in this, let me be fully in this and observe how this feels for me and what's going on in my body. And let me pay acute attention to it, all the while breathing slowly in through my nose, even slower out. So, and it got to the point where I'm breathing in and I'm moaning and I'm yelling and, just processing through my breath very intentionally, so that knowing that my breath was the factor by which I would welcome in this experience and say yes to it, and then slowly dissolve it or let it go and move on to the next, knowing that the next breath was gonna fucking hurt, but just being with it. And then dropping back in my head, and this is why I said, this level of pain was almost psychedelic. Like it actually was very similar to a psychedelic experience, because what happened is I sort of drifted back into this awareness of what was happening, and it was marvelous. There was something astounding about the ability of the body to signal bad or like need to change, or something foreign object, moving foreign object right now. Like the amount of sensation was, we can be awestruck by the grandiosity of a big wave, or grandiosity of, love, the feeling, emotion of love. And pain can be that way too. You're just utterly overcome by it. And it's to the level that there's no other choice but surrender. And what happened in that moment, I thought was really interesting, was I had an opportunity to relate to the pain that so many people are in. And I don't always get that. I'm a healthy guy. I've mostly been healthy in my life. There are people who are in pain like that every day. There are cancer patients who are living with that right now. And I had an opportunity to really be in that and notice what that was like, and actually build empathy for that level of pain that I had never been in before. So it was that too. It was like it was an up-leveling in my ability to, in my awareness of what's possible. And it was scary. I mean, it's scary to think that there's people that are in pain like that. And it's empowering as hell to know that I could move through it and move on to something else and breathe through it and distance myself to a place where I only imagine that, people who put their hands in gloves full of bullet ants in the Amazon, that pain apparently is, 10x a kidney stone, let's say. what is the mindset training for that? And is it the case that when you're in pain that is that acute, you don't even necessarily need training? There's something about the body that kicks in, and maybe it's shock, maybe you just pass out, or maybe it's, our breath gets active, like it or not. But there's some part of the body that knows that and that starts to process that. I did it intentionally because I know some, strategies, mostly with breathing, but I don't know that my experience was that much different than it would have been if I didn't. There was a surrender, bring you to your knees kind of pain that was just inevitable.
Fire truck's coming for you right now.
Yeah, see that?
It's like, that was powerful.
Trigger.
Yeah.
God. Oh, by the way, I have to go and see there's an incredible EMT that came that night. And I have to go see him, and he's right around here, so we're going to bring him some mud water.
Oh, that's cool.
Because I was asking him, he's a British guy, and I said, what can I bring you to say thank you? Do people thank you guys? Because these guys are, it's amazing what they, it was a team, it was a man and woman, and they came in and they're like ripped. They're just so like healthy, and they're coming in the middle of the night, and they're coming in there and they're just dealing with me. It's just such heroes, truly. And I was like, do people thank you? Do they, and they said, well, not really that often. And I said, wow. Like, I would imagine the firehouse would be piled in cookies. But so anyway, I said, what can I bring you? And they said, he said, just some good coffee would be lovely. And I said, all right, we got you, man. I got you. I have something better. So some good strong coffee. Yeah.
Wow.
So
did you use any...
By the way, quick question.
Yeah.
Did you get this from Shane's dispenser?
Yes, I did.
Okay. It's not good.
No. It doesn't taste like mud water at all.
Can we talk about this for a second?
Sure.
So because our founder, Shane, likes to experiment a lot. He's the grand experimenter. Mud water was an experiment, and it's one that works beautifully, it turns out. He's also an iterator, so he makes things better and better. Version 1 of the mud water dispenser is right out there.
It's like a 7-Eleven soda dispenser that we have mud water, matcha, and
exactly
various quote unquote drinks coming out of. But this has like a sour taste to it.
Here's the problem. Shane was experimenting with this before you went on your trip to Mentawise. That's exactly what we're drinking. This has not been like refreshed. No. So this is a month and a half old, and you're feeding me this, and I'm supposed to talk on this podcast?
Oh my God.
Come on.
Dude. But that's that also is what Shane does. He'll get something, but he doesn't know that it can be like cleaned or recharged. He had like this little UE boom speaker in a sauna that had been dead for like 6 months. And I was like, dude, you like take it out and charge it. Like, I know he got that thing, ran it down to 0% battery, and then like moved on to another experiment. And it's like, oh, I'm going to do a dispenser now.
This is why he brings on teams to follow through.
Yeah, because he's 10 years ahead.
Yep.
Every time.
Really is visionary. We're talking about that. Do you think you're a visionary or an executor? Like, executive, somebody who executes, or maybe this isn't a duality, but I find that I like to think that I'm an entrepreneur or visionary because that's what we're taught to think is,
Yeah, well, visionaries need producers. Otherwise, it doesn't get done.
That's the thing. So I guess human design talks about this, manifesting generators and stuff like that. Where do you fall in that continuum?
I think that I'm a bit of both. I think that I can do what's needed to be done, but can also see where something's going. Yeah. Six months, a year down the line. Yeah. I think I have a combo of that. I like writing's my favorite thing, and that's a lot about being so in the details of what's happening and bringing a situation to life and bringing color to it. So I think that that's probably more about like what's happening in the moment, and making that vivid and alive. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that it's one or the other. I think that certain people have tendencies towards future or present, but I wouldn't define myself as one or the other.
I know that I've relinquished a lot of my ideas about being visionary because I so enjoy following someone with a vision. Like I've just and I'm good at following through with the vision. I have my own, like for film projects and stuff. I know what I want to do, but like I don't think 5 years ahead. I think maybe a year ahead, and I like improvising. I'm good at that. I'm good at being here now.
You're the kind of person where you'll make a bad project good. Like if you like, I could give you a cup or a
Not this
notebook
cup.
or not
I
that
can't make
cup.
that
You
good.
can't make that good, bro. There's no fixing this.
This stuff's gonna give me kidney stones.
But yeah, you're someone who gets so into it that if given enough time with something, you'll make the story good and you'll make it work. And you have such understanding of narrative and various emotional chords that you can hit and timing and tempo of a story that you more than just about anyone else I've ever met could make a shitty premise good enough to watch.
Polish it. Turd.
Yeah, you can polish. You're great
can
at polishing turds is what I'm trying to tell you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But no one can make this good because I just learned that it's 2 months old.
Oh God. Yep.
Did you think you were going to die at a certain point when you had your kidney stones?
I didn't know that I wasn't.
Okay. Were there any like
That was
flurry of thoughts?
Well,
that
here's
came
the
through?
thought. Here's the thought that came through. When I did learn that it was kidney stones, or when the EMT said that, the thought that went through my head is, and he said, this is, some people say this is painful as labor. Again, I didn't say that. I wouldn't say that. But because, and I heard that, and I started thinking like, well, on the other side of labor is a baby, right? Is this beautiful bundle of joy, and there's so much meaning and purpose in that pain. That is like the pain that leads to something miraculous and wonderful. Such could be said of like delivering a kidney stone unto the world, but I don't think there's not as much meaning and purpose in that. So the main thing that
It would have
was
been
like,
funny if you would have held it and
yeah,
rocked
right?
your kidney stone.
I mean, I could see someone doing that.
It's a boy.
You've invested so much work in that thing. So it was mainly that like, wow, there is pain that sort of leads nowhere. And picture that you're going through that much pain, but it's because you're dying. And that was my first real whiff of that, which is like, maybe there's nothing good on the other side of this. I sort of knew there was kidney stone, but what if it's not? What if this is just leading to my imminent demise? And there's people that look down the barrel of that all the time, every day. And I will someday, perhaps. Who knows? So that was like my first whiff of that. And that, then you start, is it death itself that may be meaningful? And is there a meaningful way that I can process this pain through to the unknown?
Did you feel at all like there were any life shifts or people you wanted to call? Some people get hit with those, like, I don't want to be a banker anymore.
My kidney stone
Yeah.
just knocked me out of, yeah. I became a circus act after my,
Yeah.
I joined the Blue Man Group.
But as you said, it was in some ways psychedelic,
Yeah.
right? And
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that kind of overwhelm can reprioritize.
I think the reprioritization was what is mine to hold. And it was that, like, this is my pain to hold. And there is going to be some amount of pain that I welcome because somebody's got to hold it. That's what it felt like. It's like the world is in pain. This is my turn. And that we all have a time in our life where it's our turn. And how do you handle that? And to do so with grace and dignity and to really say yes to it, I think is the best we can attempt to do. And it will probably make a mess of you. But my proudest moment was cracking jokes with a few of the EMT. So he said there's some, we're in the back of the ambulance and he's pulling up at the hospital and I'm barely, I can barely speak at this point. I've had some morphine too, but it's working on the parts of the body that aren't hurting. So I'm feeling it everywhere but my kidneys and my back. And I get pushed out the door of this ambulance, and as they're pushing me out the door, they said, "Careful, it's there's a little bump on the way out." And I said that, you know, there sure is, or something, you know, a little kidney stone joke, and went.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of that that I, you know, could find the humor in it and get to know these EMTs, and really it was like, but it was like the divide between like Pain Monster and then just like jabbering.
Oh, you can get so funny in the hospital.
Oh yeah,
it's the place, man.
Weird place.
Yeah,
it's weird in there. I mean, it's wonderful. It's an amazing thing. You go into that CAT scan, and it's like, I cannot begin to know what technology is in this machine, but it is impressive.
Did you feel at all like you had been practicing for it?
Yes.
Like a lot, you spent a lot of time breathing, which is arguably just pointless. Like you just spent an hour just breathing, bro. You could have learned some languages by then. You know that there is a lot of just sitting with the sensation.
It's such an emo thing to say. Breathing is pointless. It's pointless. Just get a shirt.
What's the reason for this breath work anyway?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, but that is, my mom broke her hip last year, and she's a little Yoda. She's been doing meditation and ayahuasca for years, and she felt like it was all practice to be able to stay with that pain. And I like the idea of that. I do. I think that there is something about feeling more equipped to handle those situations with dignity, and to be able to say yes, and to be able to notice if your mind's telling yourself a story. Like when I was with the guy who busted his shoulder, I just kept telling him, like, dude, this is just temporary. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's not a head injury.
Yeah.
It's just temporary. And he's like, oh, thanks, man.
That's
really helpful.
So helpful to know.
Yeah. Because the stories are what creates the suffering. The pain is something you can't really argue with, but the story is something that you can craft to make the suffering less.
So what do you tell someone who's clearly dying?
It's just temporary.
It is. Yeah. It is. It's the same thing, right? Same. It's temporary. Yeah.
I don't know though, man. Those are questions above my pay grade.
I'm just a surfer.
Yeah.
Who wears Patagonia.
And a cowboy hat.
And an occasional cowboy hat. And you have been wearing some nice other things. We've all noticed.
Thank you. I'm happy about it. I appreciate that. Well, before we started this podcast, you made a suggestion that we read some of New York Times 36 questions that will make you fall in love. Yeah. And I just stood up and gave you a standing ovation because I had read those questions and thought these would be so great, or at least some of them would be so great to do on a podcast. So much so that I had them in a little notes folder on my computer, but had yet to do it. So I want to ask you a couple questions.
Yeah. And by context, I actually did this with my current love and my girlfriend, and we're totally in love. So this thing works, man. So watch out.
Watch out. I'm ready for it. First question. Do you have a secret hunch about how you're going to die? I swear to God, that's the first question.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I want to say drowning because I've heard it's peaceful. Here's what I know about drowning. This is an extrapolation about drowning, and I think this is telling. This is actually very comforting to me and hopefully all you surfers, right? There's a thing in Marine Corps buds where they conk people out, and they call it seeing the wizard. Maybe you've heard this on some of our masculine podcasts that you maybe listen to. But they call it seeing the wizard, when you conk out and you get this kind of like fuzzy white light, and then you're brought up to surface and you're revived because your body goes into power saving mode. Basically, when you conk out because of oxygen, when you're underwater, you still have like 30% of oxygen level. You're just going into power saving mode. So as soon as you come back up, your body reboots and you're fine.
And not only that, when you pass out, your larynx will close for another few minutes. And then after that, your body will take what's called its terminal breath, where it's like, all right, fucking YOLO, we're going to try and breathe one more time. But after you pass out, you won't immediately start breathing in water, which is what can do the most long-term damage.
Right.
The brain stuff happens far after you pass out.
So we know this stuff. So our body knows this stuff and is good at this stuff. So what that says to me is if you did die by drowning, the last thing that would happen is seeing the wizard. That's the last conscious thing. And people describe that as a very pleasant, white, kind of fuzzy light experience. And so I'm kind of cool with that idea, that would be the way out in drowning. It would just kind of, there'd be certainly some moments of panic, and then but I've experienced those in freediving. You kind of train that and then get close to that edge. So hunch that I will die from a heart attack at 95. Hope that I will die drowning at 97.
Yeah. I've blacked out drowning in one of those survival breath hold courses. They put you in a pool and you do a big breath hold, and you have someone there who taps on your back every 15 seconds. So you need to put a finger up and then put the finger down.
Yeah.
And you're in a safe environment, so you're trying to go for as long as you can. And they were, 4 minutes, 4 minutes 30, 5 minutes. And I remember at the time I was focusing on walking through every room in my childhood house and picturing it with as much vivid detail as I could, because it's just so uncomfortable. It's like by that point you're shaking, and you feel like you're on a freaking bull on a rodeo. Your body's just, your diaphragm's just trying to get air at that point. But there was a point then where I just felt so good and kind of euphoric. And then they brought me up, and there's video of it, and I'm doing the so it wasn't a full blackout. It was a brownout. And I look around and I'm like, I could have gone longer. And they're like, why don't you sit the next couple plays out,
nothing
bro?
Funnier than the person who's stone-faced drunk or in that state or whatever, trying to convince you that they're fine.
Yeah.
That's just hilarious.
I pulled it off.
Yeah.
This reminds me of a story that
that's cool, man.
My brother and his buddies were down at this lagoon area having a party in high school, and there was this dude there who's this very ego-driven, big, larger than life dude, and he's telling this story in front of all these girls, and there's this bonfire around, and he's in a chair, one of those old plastic chairs, and he just pauses, and his arms do the wheel back because he had been leaning back, and he just goes head over heels into the lagoon and comes up drenched and goes, "I'm not even wet."
That's good. Do you have a hunch about how you're going to die?
I hope also it would be in my sleep at 95. I got good genes, man. My grandma, they're trying to get rid of her, but she won't go. She's 98, and literally 5 years ago, my mom was like, "You might want to see grandma. She's getting pretty old, and I think that it's gonna be on the way." I said goodbye to her 5 years ago, and she just still, and I keep coming back.
She's got fish to fry, man.
And she's doing great. She's so peaceful. She's in a super nice old folks home, very grateful, goes in and out of naps, but just smiles more than I ever remember her smiling.
By the way, are we still saying old folks home?
I don't know. What do you call it now?
It's senior living facility.
Senior living facility.
I'm not judging. I'm actually asking. It's one of those,
I don't know.
It's probably a very ageist term, I would guess.
The Wizards Union.
The elder.
Yeah, the elderlies.
Yeah.
But she seems happier than she's. It was funny. My brother and I went to see her recently, and we're jealous of her state of mind. She has no bullshit, and she's just happy, stoked on. She kind of still knows who we are. Seems like things are going well in our lives, and
so maybe I have that to look forward to.
But
cement truck falling on you.
Yeah, I can imagine. I have this reoccurring fear of rappelling rock climbing and having tied the knot wrong.
No.
And like there's like the final grasp at the rope as you're going back.
Yeah.
I've had that dream a few times, so that's as close as I'll get
I
on
just watched Cliffhanger.
my hunch. What is your most treasured memory?
My niece being born.
What was that like?
So interesting to see your niece be born, first of all. Not many men get that opportunity to be with their sister when she's giving birth, but my sister's my bestie. And she went into labor, and she was in labor for close to 30 hours, and my mom was there. And at hour like 25, I'm just sitting at her house waiting for her to give birth and come home and, welcome the baby. But my mom was like, Chris, do you want to be here? And my mom kind of brokered this deal, and she was like, this would be an amazing thing for you to see. You may never get to see this. I still haven't had any children. And so she said, and she asked Meg, and Meg was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I got to come and watch her deliver her. I wasn't playing catcher. That's the husband's job, obviously. I'm off to the side there. But the amazing thing about it is because her legs were up and the way that she was positioned, and I'm at the side watching, when little Romy came out, her face was facing me. So I'm here, and I'm the first person to ever see her face. And watching her come out, I mean, I know any of you, listeners who've seen this happen, there's a palpable shift in the world. It's like this lightning bolt in the room, and I've never experienced an energy shift like that. And it's just like, it's a shockwave, man. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen times a million. It just ran through my whole body. I can't talk about it without crying. Wow. It was so, so wonderful. And so
that's good.
Yeah. Yep.
You're the first person he saw.
She
saw.
A little face. A little squirmy face. Yeah. And I feel like we have a special thing just because of that. It's just.
That's cool.
Yeah, yours?
The first one that came to mind was.
This is your most treasured memory?
Most treasured memory. The first one that hit me was taking LSD on the top of a mountain in Big Sur with my mom. Yeah. We had never taken psychedelics together, and that's an experience I know most children and parents don't get to have. And I have a close relationship with my mom.
Sounds like it.
So we took a tab of acid together at sunset, overlooking these rolling hills on a crystal clear day over the Big Sur ocean, which is granite bottom. So you can just see, how the visibility on that ocean just goes down and down and down. We sat underneath this oak tree looking out at the ocean. And I saw all these various fractals appear. And that was before I had ever done a podcast. And I felt, at the time, I just remember feeling a bit lost. I think I was probably 23. And the message that kind of came through it was that I could just lead with questions, and that would sort of take me through life. Like it didn't always need to be about me or on me, but that could be this guiding force for me around the universe or the cosmos, was just kind of keep asking questions, keep like looking, keep like searching. And then whenever you feel lost, you could just go back to that. 'Cause I find that, and I think that there's been a lot of truth to that insight in the years to come, because whenever I feel the most self-destructive, it's always thoughts about the self. It's always like, I'm not good enough. I failed here. The story of my life. It's so much of depression, which I've had some experience with, is a story about the self. Mm-hmm. And almost immediately when I can look out at the world, it just makes my story less important, less indulgent. And I find that even when I'm at my most lost or unmoored, I can ask questions about the world, and that guides me back.
Curiosity is the antidote to fear.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And fear is what mucks up the whole works.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my most treasured memory.
That's great.
Yeah.
Happiness is other people. You say hell is other people. Both are true.
I think that happiness is only real when shared.
Yeah, that's good.
That was the line that Christopher McCandless wrote in his journal in the bus.
On his deathbed.
On his deathbed, yeah, into the wild.
Yeah.
Happiness is only real when shared.
Oh, man. Yeah. That's really cool that you had that experience with your mom. How do you talk about psychedelics with your parent when you are... so there's the moment, I would guess there's like, for a lot of people, the parent probably wants the opportunity. I mean, this isn't everybody, but I'm sure there's parents out there that would love to do psychedelics with their kid and vice versa. And there's probably this chasm of conversation that's like, how do you get to the point where you're like, Ma,
you want to do acid?
I got an idea.
Sir?
Yeah. How did you do it?
Well, we've always been open about drugs and psychedelics. Interestingly enough, the first time that this kind of says everything you need to know about my relationship with my mom, but she told me when I was maybe 9 that if I didn't do drugs or smoke weed until I was 18, she would give me a trip anywhere in the world. She would pay for me to go on a trip anywhere in the world.
Whoa.
On my 18th birthday.
How's that for a dangled carrot?
Right.
Wow.
And at the time, I'm not thinking about my brain's development or my frontal cortex and just how important those years through your teens are in brain development. You just don't have the perspective, right? I mean, maybe some people do. I certainly didn't. But it just set up this trust and this dynamic where I was like, shit, yeah, I want to trip around. I want to go to Indonesia when I'm 18. So when I was 18, I took my first trip to Indo. And on this last time that I just got back, I remember thinking of her and thinking about that experience and getting, I got the best barrels of my life up until that point, and just thinking like, this was so worth it to not smoke weed for a few years.
And is that was that really the incentive that made you not? Otherwise, would you have been smoking weed? Or do
I
you
think so. Yeah. I mean, you're just around it so much in high school, going to parties in Santa Cruz. Our whole town is stoned.
Teachers are high.
So I think that it just gave me a reason to not do it, and also to, like, the trust, like, to not lie to your parent. Yeah, I think also set up a really cool dynamic where she's like, of course you could lie and take this trip, but I'm going to trust you.
I had a friend whose dad said, you can do any drug you want, just do it with me first. And he did. Every time he wanted to try something new, weed, acid, mushrooms, whatever, he'd do it with his dad the first time.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Because I mean, as a father, it's a cool way to, like, yes, this is an intense experience. I'd love to be there with you to guide you through it.
I'd be down to do that with my kids if I ever have kids. Because so much of the drugs. What's that?
You just want to.
Yeah, like, hey, you got some good shit?
You just don't know where to get it.
Yeah, I just know that by the time I'm to that age, I'll be like, hey, guys, so, my dealer died. I don't have another one. Yeah. So I want you to have this experience with me, son. It's really important for you and for me.
That reminds me of
like, Dad, you did all the drugs. Sorry, son. I just want to test it for you to make sure they're safe.
Yeah, they're good.
Hey, get more of it. Get more of it.
Get out of here.
Get
I'm
a
peeking.
lot more of it.
I'm in a K-hole. Get out of here. So I think there's it reminds me of an acting class I did where you go into a room. Just picture this. This is great. You go into a room full of people, and it's very important to know your type as an actor, because that's like knowing your brand. It's like knowing why people come to you for your services. If you're the doofy guy who's like, a weird doofy Crispin Glover type, you need to know that. You're not going to win at a leading man. You're never going to get that role, vice versa. So you go into this acting class, and the first thing that happened is you sit down in a chair and there's people all around the side of the room, and they all have you have a notebook, and so they'll call you up one by one, and so they call me up. I have a notebook, and what I'm supposed to do is write down everything that people say. And what they start doing, and this is the first day in the class, so they just met me. They don't know me from Adam. They just have looked at me for 5 seconds as a casting director would. And they start calling out your type. Affable doctor, college professor, sexy archaeologist. And these are all things people said for me. Dad who goes to the prom who probably shouldn't. Dad who steals their kids' drugs, you know? Just, I like that as an exercise, random story, right? But like, isn't it interesting to think about? It's an amazing thing to do because you're like, how does the world see me?
Yeah.
You know? And you get to know, then like, no bullshit. This is what you look like. This is what you're coming into the room with. And then if you want to be something else, awesome, but know what you're up against.
Yeah.
Or lean in, man.
Yeah, put on the cowboy hat. Maybe people will see you differently.
And the interesting thing is how much of the time people are encouraged by it. You know, people are like, yes, I am the weird school marm. Like that, they want to be that. That's like, you know, and alternately how surprised some people can be. That they're not a leading man or they're not a leading lady.
Yeah. I think I would get like Mormon.
Yeah, that'd be like the whole thing. You just be writing Mormon over and over.
Like, well, I didn't do drugs until I was 18.
Yeah.
Mormon jock.
Mormon jock. Be. Yeah.
Little do you know.
Tennis coach.
Yeah.
You could be, what else? Guy who tries
EMT? Maybe I could be an EMT.
That's what I was going to say. It's a guy who resets someone's shoulder that's out of whack.
Yeah, the guy's like, oh, I trust you. I'm like, I'm a writer. I use my fingers all day.
You could also be like creepy pervert. Yeah. just know that.
Yeah,
it's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I could.
Not saying you are.
Like have the glasses that go up and then down, like that. Those ones.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Lurking pervert.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in your wheelhouse.
How we ended up here, I do not know, but I like these questions. What item would you save from a burning building?
My bong. No, I have a teddy bear. I don't have a bong. I have a teddy bear that I've had since I was born. And my sister and my brother got it for me. And this was a tradition in our family, is that the oldest, first my parents got one for my brother, and then my brother went to pick out the one for my sister, and then those two picked out one for me, and then the three of us picked out one for Teddy. So they're very special little bears, and I've had one since the day I was born. And I think it'd be that, because it's the only like item that I prefer not to lose. It's very specific.
That's good.
Yeah.
A teddy bear.
Yeah.
I feel like you and I have a fine relationship with our shit.
Yeah.
Like, you got nice stuff.
Yeah, it can come and go.
It can come and go.
I like to think like pick photo albums and stuff, but how often do I actually look at those or journals? I have all my mountains of journals and stuff like that, but I picture a day when I'm 80 and I'm rooting through them, but who knows if that day will come.
You're like, Jesus, these are redundant.
Yeah.
Self-doubt.
Got it.
Horny self-doubt. Hey, here's a cool idea. Yeah, you should have done that.
Yeah, should have done that. Did do that. Shouldn't have done that. Horny self-doubt.
All right. Let's get to, we've been going for a little. What's up?
Yeah, just any item.
From me. Yeah. Any item. Any item for me would, my fucking cell phone. My house is burning down. call an ambulance.
That's the correct answer, probably, huh? My pants.
Yeah. But I don't have too much connection with my stuff. I mean,
clearly you live in a pretty modest spot.
Dude, I lived in an RV for 2 years, and now I live in a small little studio that feels like a fucking mansion.
Yeah.
Dude, I was like, whoa, I can lay down in my house right now, like splayed open starfish. This is crazy. So yeah, I don't my cowboy hat.
Bringing it back around for the close.
Yes, yes, yes. All right, well, let's fall in love with this question. What are 3 things that you and your partner, Kyle, appear to have in common?
We have in common a love of knowledge and a curiosity that accompanies that. We have in common like an embodiment, a skill of embodiment, like a true character. You know that embodiment. My sister was talking about this research about embodiment as actually like a what do they call it? A character, a positive character trait, not a come on, what is the word for a very positive character trait? And a virtue.
Virtue.
So it's actually like virtuous to be embodied.
Sure.
Because it's not just like you're good at having a body. So like when you are embodied, that's a virtuous thing because you can actually use your body in the world for your aims and the good of the world and all that stuff. So I think embodiment is something that's underrated as a virtuous trait. So I think we have the virtue of embodiment. We both love our bodies and move through them in the world. And lastly, I think we're both people that have self-doubt that people wouldn't put their finger on in the first 5 minutes, but then you dig and you're like, oh, why are you not more confident?
Yeah.
You seem more confident, but you're not. How's that?
That's good.
Yeah.
I like all that. Yeah, I like all that. I think that we can both taste when mud water has gone sour.
Yep.
We both got that.
One of us sooner to admit it
Yeah,
than others.
you admitted it, but we both noticed
But I still
it.
drank it for a good...
Yeah, this is like the stale popcorn test, you know, about
God.
this, where like they bring people into a movie theater, they give them a thing of popcorn that's stale, they eat some of it, they stop, and then they brought another group in and just made the popcorn container twice the size, and then they ate twice as much stale popcorn before stopping.
Whoa. I'm glad the mug wasn't bigger.
Yeah. I think we're both romantics.
Oh, yeah.
I think we both see the world and the story and see story through a romantic lens, which is why I think that we both love Anthony Bourdain, among other reasons. But I think I'm rereading Kitchen Confidential right now, and he gives himself so much permission to be a romantic with food and with his life and with story, and it just makes everything better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like why would you not? And I think that you and I are hopelessly romantic in the way that we perceive.
I think
the world.
romance and curiosity are hand in hand.
I've never thought about that.
Because romance is really like a curiosity about, you know, the object of your affection. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Just thinking through that one.
Yeah.
And unfolding curiosity that ends up in romance. It's like, how do I fully engage this person or this thing or this life? Like, I'm so curious about how to unfold it further, you know?
Yeah.
Romance, yeah.
And I think that we both get annoyed easily.
Yeah. I'm so annoyed by that horrible mud water. It wasn't made properly.
I think that we maybe come across as easygoing, but we're very particular and can get annoyed easily, especially with anything that has to do with story.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the thing that makes us most annoyed.
Yeah. Yeah, I do get annoyed a lot.
Yeah. But that's where all the good stuff comes from.
Yeah.
So much of it.
You got to be sensitive to be a critic. You got to be a little critical in the arts.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
This was so fun. We're going to do so many of these, and I could just talk to you for hours, my friend.
Oh, great. Hopefully anyone's still listening.
Yeah.
If you are, comment the word vergüenza in the comments below. Yeah.
Chris Keener, you're one of my favorite people. Thank you so much for doing this little JV test here in the new Trends with Benefits studio.
Thank you.
Upwards and onwards.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. That was fun.
Very fun.